Yes, sir.
I saw Quiet Riot 2018 when Marshall was in. I got to meet interaction with Frankie Banali. He pointed at me, he said, "Wait right there." He came around, he gave me his drumstick, and I took a picture with him. And, well, before I took a picture with him, I said, "Man," I said, "I love your drumstick." But the question I said, "You got to play with fucking Blackie Lawless, man." He said, "How was that?" And he said, "It was amazing." So, how was playing with Frankie Banali?
Yeah, he said that in the times when we weren't having a knockdown drag out.
Well, it was just being nice to him. But
Frankie and I, he was the first person I ever met when I came to LA. The very first night I was there. And like any close relationship, you're going to have moments where it gets a little contentious. And him being a hot-headed Italian, we could butt heads sometimes. But you know what? That's passion. And that's a good thing. And I'll give you an example. We used to have this thing we called a toolbox. And what that meant was other people's licks that we had learned from other records and stuff like that. And you learn those licks when you're a kid growing up playing in cover bands. You take them and you put them in your toolbox. Then they come. You put them through your filter first, and then they go into the toolbox. And they're always there. And so when we go in to do something, when we get stumped on a solution to something, we'd say, "Well, what's in the toolbox?" And that was a private thing that him and I had when we talked about the toolbox. Right? Give you an example. We're doing The Idol. And I had, because I'm a guitar player, I think like a guitar player, I don't think like a drummer. I suggested this idea for him, and he says, "That can't be done." And it put me in mind, we were talking about the Beatles just a second ago. There's a famous story that Ringo tells about John Lennon came in one day, guitar player again, thinking like a guitar player, not understanding that something can't really be done. Lennon has this 45 and he lets Ringo listen to it. He says, after it's done, Lennon says to him, he goes, "So you hear that? You got it?" And Ringo says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I want you to play it just like that on the record that we're doing." And Ringo says, "Well, that's great, John, but there's two drummers playing on the track." And Lennon says, "Well, don't let that bother you." Well, that was my attitude with Frankie, right? So we're doing Chainsaw Charlie, and I came up with this wacky thing that I wanted to do in the verse. Because me and him and Bob Kulick made that record. We talked about it before we made the record, and we said, we don't want to do one gratuitous note on this record. We want everything to have meaning. And we were set on that before we started. So I come up with this idea, and first thing Frankie says, "It can't be done." And I says, "Well, why?" And he says, "Because I need 3 arms to play it." And I said, "Well, okay, but can we just modify it a little bit?" He goes, "No." He goes, "It's impossible what you're asking me to do." I said, "Well, will you just try it?" "No." "Will you just try it?" So finally he goes out, after 5 minutes of this, he goes out, and I'm watching it, and I'm watching his wheels turning while he's doing it, right? And he's starting to get close to the idea that I'm asking him to do. And, and he's getting frustrated. He takes the sticks and throws them across the room, walks around the room for 5 minutes. I go back into the control room because I don't want to endure his wrath, and I'm watching him through the glass, right? And he's just, he's fuming, walking around the room. But I can see the wheels turning in his head. And he goes back to the drums, and he modified it a little bit, and then he started getting it. And I watched this this goofy idea that I had being born right before my eyes, and he got it. So,
Thank you.
he, like I said, like any other, I've heard musicians are temperamental. But he was no different than anybody else. And I miss him great.
I was just, that's the only thing when I met I could ask him. I was like, I didn't know playing with you. Thank you for answering the question.
Yes.
Like